Is wrestling actually growing? It's a simple yes or no question that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. But there are many different ways that we can actually measure this, like the number of NCAA programs, the financial success of wrestling, getting butts in seats with ticket sales, the viewer numbers, the participation rates among high schoolers and the youth, men's versus women's wrestling. There's so many different ways that we can measure this. In fact, I actually asked you, the Fanco Fanatics on Twitter, I said, do you think the sport of wrestling is actually growing? Yes or no? And if you are live in the YouTube chat, make sure that you're answering that poll as well. So 75% of the audience said, yes, it's growing, where 25% said, no, it's actually not growing. And I want to get to the bottom of that question about what is actually happening. So make sure you're subscribed to comment along with this live stream because it's going to be one heck of a night. I can promise you that. So this is the layout for the show tonight. First of all, I'm going to be going through some stats with you about what is happening in college wrestling and what is happening in wrestling as a whole, whether it's growing or not, just to lay some things out. Then we're going to have 3 guests on, and boy, is it going to be an awesome show because first we have Baschamania, Justin Basch joining at 6:15. At 6:30, we're going to have Stalemates on, Zach Bogle from Stalemates, and then Cayden Henschel will be joining the show. And I see Cayden already in the chat, which is fantastic. Make sure you're commenting along with this chat as well. And then at the end of the show, I'm going to give you some ways that I am personally, with Fanco Wrestling, with your help, am actually helping to grow the sport of wrestling. It's going to be one great night. And at the end of that night, I'm also going to reveal to you next week's guest because I plan to start doing weekly live streams. And it's a big guest. You're not going to want to miss next week either. So if you don't know me, my name's Josiah, the host of Fanco Wrestling. And I'm sure if you're in the chat, you're joining because you know who I am. You know who Fanco Wrestling is. It's been 3 years that I've been on YouTube now, and there's been a lot of crazy things that have happened in those 3 years. Tonight, we're celebrating 2 things. Not only are we celebrating 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, 30,000, mind you, the number of wrestling fans that are in Rec Hall for a Penn State match is around 8,000. We have 30,000, okay, which I'm psyched about and want to keep growing. But the second reason we're celebrating, it's my birthday tomorrow, actually. On September 1st, it is my birthday. I'm turning 27, not 30, but I'm happy to have more subscribers than how old I am. So let's go through a couple of stats as we get into tonight's show. I want to give you, first of all, at the top of this show, some ways you can support the channel. First of all, if you're watching and you're not able to comment along, it's because only subscribers can comment along. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. The second way you can subscribe is actually by joining the channel. If you love Fanco Wrestling, you love what we're doing to help grow the sport of wrestling, you can join the channel as a Fanco Fanatic, officially a Fanco Fanatic. And through that, you're going to get behind-the-scenes videos. You're also going to get some exclusive videos that I don't share anywhere else. These are only for the behind-the-scenes Fanco Fanatics. And if you're in the chat tonight, one cool feature, if you join at just the 99-cent level, I mean, literally $1 a month, and it helps grow the channel, you get these super cool emojis to use in the chat. And if you are a member, I want to see you spam the chat. Spam the chat right now with those exclusive channel emojis because it's going to be, I mean, it's just really cool that we have these, that we have this community. And you see, I'm commenting along because it's a lot of fun. Now, to start out the show, I want to do something kind of fun. And what I'm going to do is, because I'm just super psyched about tonight, right? I'm going to gift 10 memberships in the chat right now. So the first 10 people who get these memberships can join the channel for those behind the scenes. And I want to see more people join in tonight. So make sure you're commenting along as well. Now let's stop stalling and get on with the show. So first of all, let's look at some of these statistics. And with these statistics, as we're getting into, you see the layout tonight, the current number of D1 programs, okay, is there are 79, I believe, total programs right now between, and there have been a lot that have been added recently. There's a few dropped and a few added. Little Rock has been added. Presbyterian, Long Island, Cal Baptist, Augustana, and Morgan State have all been added in the past 5 years. Now, unfortunately, during that time, we've also seen programs getting dropped. Grand Canyon, Boise State, Eastern Michigan. That was, remember when they had a great NCAA championships and then boom, they come back that week and the programs dropped. It was absolutely ridiculous. Old Dominion in Fresno State also dropped programs. So we see programs going up and down. Is wrestling growing or is it not growing? Right? Like, and maybe that's something else that we have to talk about. The next thing that we have to talk about is NCAA viewership. Okay, so since last year, from 2020 to 2021, or 2021 to 2022, excuse me, NCAA viewership is actually up 8%, with over 632,000 people watching the NCAA finals, which is phenomenal. And to me, as a YouTube channel, that gives me faith and me excitement, because when you have 600,000 wrestling fans watching and we have 30,000 subscribers, that just shows that we can continue to grow, right? But then back, and this is interesting, right? So we see that. So the good and the bad, just like growing programs and programs that are dropped, right? So the next thing is, okay, NCAA finals up 8% in viewership, 600,000, right? But back in 2013, and this is from Andrew Spey of Flow Wrestling, that I got this graph here, there were 860,000 people watching the NCAA finals. So what the heck happened? Well, actually, in that year, it was the year that Kyle Dake won his 4th title. It was a huge matchup between him and David Taylor. And that what gets me wondering, like, maybe next year when we have 2 guys going for their 4th titles, could we see viewership increase again? I think it's very possible that it happens. We have a record-setting NCAA finals between Yanni and Spencer Lee. And of course, everybody likes seeing Penn State go for their title in the team race. And then you got to compare this to other sports, right? So that's an arbitrary number, like 800,000, 600,000. How does that compare to other sports? And women's gymnastics, that championships had 922,000 viewers, the most watched ever. The men's lacrosse finals had 500,000. So wrestling is ahead of men's lacrosse, which is kind of cool. Women's basketball finals had 4.8 million viewers. Holy cow. So it like that just kind of sets you back. Like, are we that behind basketball? Maybe. I mean, basketball and football are 2 of the biggest sports in America, right? And the softball championships had 1.7 million. So there's still a lot of growth that we have to do. And the other thing I want to look at right before we get ready to bring on our first guest of the night in Justin Basch, is men's versus women's wrestling. And this was a fun one for me because, to be honest, it's one that I didn't even think about the other day until a lot of you brought it up to me. And you said, well, it depends, Josiah. Is wrestling growing? I mean, women's wrestling is growing. I don't know about men's wrestling. Yeah, women's wrestling was at one point the fastest growing sport in America. At the beginning of this year, it was. And actually just looked it up today to check it out, like if it still is. And apparently it's not. Apparently pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America right now. And let me know. Have you ever played pickleball? I actually played it back in high school during gym class, but I haven't played it since then. Let me know if you're a pickleball fan. But it's awesome to see women's wrestling grow so much, right? I mean, so many programs are being added. Like, I think there are over 100 programs right now in women's wrestling across, JUCO, NCAA, NAIA, and more. And the Division I level, there's Presbyterian, Sacred Heart, and Iowa just added their women's wrestling team, which is, huge. When you have one of the most historic programs, one of the top programs in wrestling, adding women's wrestling, I mean, that just shows you the trajectory of everything. And so that's really, you know, awesome to hear. So we talk about viewership. Maybe that's growing. It's growing, but not as high as it could be. The number of programs is increasing. We haven't had a program dropped in a couple years, which is good. I mean, there was a whole Stanford debacle, which was a mess. And then we have women's wrestling that's growing. So that's good. But the other thing that I think is maybe left out too is part of the biggest impacts of growing wrestling is wrestling media. And that has been huge recently. I mean, back when I started Fanco back in 2019, there were definitely not as many YouTube channels or content creators around wrestling. And I think that's something that we've seen grown just in such a big way, right? Whether it's these huge entities like Flow Wrestling, who they were on YouTube back then, they were putting out some videos. To now we have I see new videos and channels pop up every day, which I like to see, and we're going to be getting into that a little bit with Justin Basch and Stalemates and Cayden Henschel, who all have phenomenal YouTube channels, by the way, and are helping to grow wrestling. I mean, not only them, you have True Tan Wrestling, which popped up, Rebels Wrestling, and even more, right? And let me know, which of these guys are you subscribed to? Let me know in the chat. I think I just want to know who's subscribed to those other channels. And my approach throughout that time when I started Fanco, because it's way different, right? Back in the day, it was just putting out random videos, and I saw this niche that needed to be filled. There was the Flow Wrestling out there who were putting out some videos, but they weren't, to me, they weren't educating fans enough. They weren't getting new people involved. And I'll tell you what, when I started really treating fans how they should be treated, right? As fans who shouldn't be looked down upon, which I felt happened way too often in wrestling. That, oh, if you don't know what freestyle wrestling is, or you don't know what this move is, you don't know what a single leg is or a cradle, then you're an idiot. No. Let's educate these other wrestling fans to bring them on into our great sport so that they understand how incredible our sport is. Heck, even Mark Zuckerberg loves our sport, the founder of Facebook, which is a funny little segment from the Joe Rogan show. And so my approach has been educating wrestlers or educating fans about wrestling, getting more in depth, and then they can get more involved in all the intricacies of our sport and get more in depth. But we need to educate others and bring more people in. And as we keep the chat going, one thing I want to say is make sure that you're commenting along, and I'm just about to bring Justin Basch on, is make sure that you are commenting along. And if you have any questions for me or for Basch or for our other guests, leave those in the chat. We're going to be taking those at the end of each guest segment. And boy, I am super psyched to get into this. Thank you for the super chats already. I see super chats from Spanky, from Jesse M. I see new members joining every second. And now I'm going to be joined by Justin Basch of Baschamania. Justin, welcome to the show tonight.
So first of all, happy birthday, because your birthday's tomorrow. Second of all, ignore my eye. Allergies are like beating me down today. And this eye is like swelling up all of a sudden. My wife's like, we gotta go to the doctor. I'm like, no, I gotta hop on Josiah's stream. I can't go to the doctor.
Well, that is brutal. Trust me, I've had allergies. I was actually reviewing an old wrestling video that I did with my high school, and my eye was literally swollen. It was like
it's the worst.
Something was in the air that day. So sorry you're dealing with the allergies. It's a pain in the butt right now. But thanks for joining us, Basch. I love having you on. So how has the off season, besides the allergies, been treating you? It's time with family, time like a little bit outside of wrestling. How's things been?
It's great, man. I mean, we built our house last year, our dream house. We had a baby boy in February that I left NCAA's halfway through the finals because I missed him so much. And instead of flying out Sunday morning, there was a flight Saturday night. So I brought my luggage to press row, right? Like when you turn the corner there where you walk up, like literally right there, I left my luggage and left. So it's been fun, spending the summer with him and watching him grow, and obviously trying to create some content in the downtime.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But between everything else you have going on with running your business, with your family, with having a newborn, with building a house, holy moly! I remember having that
Love it.
conversation with you at nationals with Zeb, and he was like, "Yeah, man, get home to your family too." And that night, I mean, with how crazy the NCAA championships are, like, sure, kudos to you to getting home to your family. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was nice to be able to do that.
Zeb probably told me 15 times, he's like, "You're making the right decision." I'm like, "I know, I'm not asking you. I know I'm making the right decision to get home. I miss my boy."
Yeah, well,
Being
well, that's
back
good. It's good that he was giving you his permission to do that. So,
Yeah, Zeb's the
with your interviews, right? You talk about that's one of the things you've been doing in the off season. I saw you got a lot of new ones recently with Bo, with Brody Teskey. Um, what's like? I mean, what do you like so much about interviewing these different wrestlers?
I actually don't. When my background is a marketing company, and in 2008 I started the company, and I've been very ingrained in the wrestling community. Cal was one of my first clients, then Burroughs and Varner and Taylor. So I've been in, and from my agency standpoint, I preach that so many people should have a podcast. And even if you're not necessarily made to do a podcast, like, I think you're great at what you do. Not everybody is as good as you on the mic, talking to a camera, whatever it may be. But my contribution to the sport, kind of tying in, what we're talking about tonight, like, my contribution is I've got a lot of friends in the sport, and I can really bring those conversations to light, and that's my contribution. So for me, it's like getting a lot of the conversations public that don't happen, whether it's with Penn State kids that don't do a lot of interviews, whether it's talking to athletes about their faith that a lot of the mainstream accounts don't cover, or it's just not their thing. For me, it's been a blessing to be able to just contribute what I can. And I've always told everybody on the content side, like, I think it's so important, especially in a niche sport like wrestling, to do what you can contribute to. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. You don't have to compete. I don't look at myself as competing with you or Zach and Stalemates. Like, I love what you guys are doing. So for me, I think it's been a blessing and a lot of fun to just be able to contribute what I can and try to hone in on, the business side of wrestling, the marketing side of wrestling, the faith of some of the athletes. So for me, I'd say that's what's probably been the best so far.
I think that's great. And it's funny you mentioned like competition, right? And that's one of the things I'm going to talk to Cayden about at the end of the show too, is like, you see all these different wrestling medias popping up and just even smaller wrestling channels, right? Maybe it's a kid with a webcam in high school or on his iPhone, which is actually how I started out, literally on my iPhone. My first video, you talk about being on the mic. I thought I was good on the mic. Like, I was brought up in public speaking. I thought I was good.
Yep.
I could speak in front of anybody, but being on camera is way different. If you're in
Yeah.
for a laugh, you go back and watch some of those first few videos I put out. They're unwatchable to me. But it showed that the niche was there, right? The niche was there, and people needed wrestling content. But that's how I see it too, Justin. It's like, it's not competition. It's like, really, like, I love supporting your stuff. I love, whatever it is, retweeting it, sharing it with others, because it's wrestling content. Same with Cayden's and Zach's and Flo's and whoever's is out there. It's like, the funny thing is, like, I don't know if do you watch American Ninja Warrior by any chance?
I have here and there. Yeah.
Okay. So I used to watch it a ton, and then they got like way too in depth with the storylines, and it was like just I wanted to see the competition, right?
Yep.
So anyway, the finale was on the other night, and you see like all these ninjas like supporting each other, even though they're competing against each other in certain ways, they're still like supporting each other, and that's kind of like how I see a lot of wrestling too. And like on YouTube especially, though, like whenever we are putting out this different wrestling content, it's all recommended to each other. And I think that's just like helping us all to grow. Like, do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, totally. I think when you're in a niche sport like wrestling, in a niche community, I always laugh because one of the biggest things that I get is I get a lot of like DMs and like, love what you do for the sport. Get it from, fans, coaches, athletes. I see Avery saying that I should be PSU president. Love that. But it's like, I get a lot of that. I also get a lot of complainers where it's like, I do this in my free time because it all started with I have so many friends and clients that are athletes that I wanted to help promote what they're doing and what they're up to, where they're competing. When you're competing in, I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. It's like when she's becoming friends with my friends and our clients. And when you're competing in Serbia in 2 weeks, it's not that easy to follow. So I try to put out, as much content as I can to help. And of course, you get people crying. Like if I just put out a men's freestyle roster, where's the Greco? Listen, go start a Greco podcast. Go start a Greco channel. Like there's so many niche areas in this sport. I don't think one person can do it all. I think that's why people get mad at Flow, where they're just like, why aren't you covering this? Why aren't you covering that? They're only one company. They can only handle so much. Imagine if ESPN was the only company who followed football and shared content. So I think the more creators that are out there that we can all kind of lift up and help promote, the better. Like I think it seems to me like a lot of us wrestling content creators are sharing stuff that's not really the same thing. And I think that's great. We all have our niches where your niche is like, even lately, you're creating a lot of content around, who would win this bracket, which by the way, the answer is Chenzo. Disrespectful that he's not the 1 seed. Very disrespectful. I think I forgot to tweet that. But it's like we're all doing very different things. I love what you're doing. I love what Zach's doing. It's not like I don't see many people coming in and being like, oh, I can do Fanco better than him. Oh, I can do a Stalemates card better than him. People are coming in and doing something different. And I think it's important that we help each other, because if you're helping something I can do and I'm helping something you can do, it's only better for the sport. And I would say for me, like when I started really following the sport was between 2008 and 2012, when Cal and Burroughs became clients. Even though I wrestled in high school, like that's what really got me suckered in year round. And the level of contact you have now with athletes, you can leave a comment and anybody in the world can respond to you. It's crazy. You didn't have that 10 years ago. So to have people that are helping that, and it's like, I had Bo on because he had a big fight. I had Brody on because he just transferred to Iowa. Like I'm trying to have people on that it's like, let me help promote you. Let me help tell your story. Let me use whatever this gift is that I have to try to help you tell your story. Let me help promote you. And I love when, I ask somebody a question and they're like, man, thank you for asking about my faith. Like I don't get an opportunity to talk about that. It's like, great. Like that's what I want to try to do is fill different niches. And I think as many of us are doing different things, and I think, for people listening, it's like, if you're passionate about something, like I see Ed Santiago talking about ACCs in 2025. Like if ACCs is his big thing and you wanted to create content around it, go do it. Go create an ACC podcast, an ACC Instagram. Yeah. I think to grow a sport, which I do think is happening, I think the more that the specific niches are covered, the more the whole sport is covered. That's why I don't care when people say like, oh, you're a Penn State homer. Yes, I am. And I've told that story why 100 times. But like, I think it's good to have, I don't consume too much mainstream sports content because some people drive me crazy, but I do consume a lot of Barstool and like Dave Portnoy and Big Cat. I think they're really doing something different. And it's like they do college football shows, NFL shows. Dave Portnoy doesn't hide his allegiance and bias for Michigan. Big Cat doesn't hide it for Wisconsin. I think you should have that. I appreciate when people are non-biased, but I also think you should have that bias. I want to, like, one of my favorite episodes this year was when Adam Fellers came on. He's obviously a diehard Iowa fan. He's on the board for the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. It was super awesome to preview the Penn State Iowa card with him. With me, I'm going to have a Penn State bias. With him, he's going to have an Iowa bias. I love that. I think we need that. I don't think we all need to be neutral. I understand if you're track wrestling or flow wrestling and you want to kind of keep that neutral perspective because of who you work for. Great. Everybody else, be biased, be niche, and I think if we help each other, it's only going to help us all grow. Because if I promote you and you promote me, we're both growing. It does make a difference.
You're spot on. And that's the funny thing. Like, I love those comments too. It's like, oh, Fanco, Josiah, you're such a Penn State homer. Why did you do this and that? And then the funny thing too is the second that I go against Penn State on any prediction,
Oh yeah,
which like
dude.
it in the Big Tens, I said that I thought Miles Amin was going to beat Aaron Brooks. And the amount of comments that I received that you're crazy, you're an idiot. I'm like, Miles Amin is an Olympic medalist. Like, he's not like some chump, right? Like he's going. Now, I love Aaron Brooks, and I'll be rooting for him as a Penn State fan, as a Penn State alum. I'm rooting for Aaron Brooks, but I'm saying with my one prediction was he was going to beat him, and the comments out there are crazy. But here's what I love about this, Bash, is like you have your biases, I have mine, Zach has his, everybody has theirs, right? But the cool thing is, like, it's educating these other fans who maybe they're not even sure what program to follow, what to do, or what to go about. Maybe they see your podcast about Brody and they're just an Iowa fan, or they're just interested in Brody from whatever it is, and they hear that and they get more interested in becoming an Iowa fan. Or maybe they hear David Carr share his story about faith, which I thought was one of the best things about Nationals this year, seeing him get down on his knees in the middle of the mat, even when he places third, which he didn't want to do that, and he's still on his knees praising, just giving grace. And the story of Aaron Brooks, and was it Aaron Brooks and Staraji who prayed for the homeless guy right outside? Like, unbelievable stories of faith. And so, like, I praise you for sharing those, because I think that's I'm a man of faith as well, and I find that very important. And so, but before we get off here, Bash, before we switch over to our next guest in Zach, one question that I have for you is that I wonder if it's good for the sport of wrestling or not. Is Penn State's reign growing wrestling, or is it making wrestling stagnant? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about that.
I'm going to let that percolate for 30 seconds while I touch on what you just said, which I think is so crucial, because yes, Penn State, Cal has made me feel like an honorary alumni, and I have so many friends, so many clients there. So I've picked 12 years ago, when they weren't good, Penn State is my team. But I'm a my guys first. Yanni is my guy. I root for him in Cornell. Like, my guys, like David Carr, I root for. Peyton Prusen at Life University,
yes,
I root for her. So I think it's great to pick individuals and root for them. And that's what I do at most weights. And that's why I didn't do certain preview shows for like World Team Trials. Like, I have my team. I'm biased. So I do think it's great when you can pick some athletes and really follow them if you can relate to them, whatever. Penn State's yes and no. I think it's great because they're kind of like the Yankees, or Alabama football. Like, you either love them or you love to hate them. I do think that's good. I don't think it's a bad thing when there's a dynasty, because as a Penn State fan, it's not as joyful rooting for the favorites to win every year.
Right.
And it might sound stupid, but it's the truth. Like, there's nothing I love more than like when the underdog wins, and rooting for the underdogs. And a lot of times it's, for me, it's like the underdogs at Penn State. I think it's fun to root for those guys, and I think underdogs can be fun to root for. But imagine the thrill for other fans, not us, if somebody dethrones, unseats, whatever you want to call it, Penn State and NCAA's. Right. Like, that's amazing for the sport. I think if you have that top guy, like when you go back to, not a huge MMA guy, but if you go back to Aldo McGregor and you see like the kind of change in the guard, it means a lot more. And, I think like with college football last year, there wasn't really a Heisman race. I think there's going to be this year. That's good. But I do think to have that, absolute defined top dog, I think it's good for the sport, because I think everybody there wants Penn State to win or lose. Not too many people are indifferent on it.
And not only that, but it just gives you somebody to root for or to root against. And that's the thing this year too, right? Is Spencer Lee and Yanni going for their 4th titles. I will be rooting for them, right? But if they do get knocked off, the world's going to go nuts. I mean, it's going to be wild. Just like when DeSanto beat Spencer Lee in his senior year. And the funny thing is, it's not like Spencer Lee's like a villain. It's not like people like hate him or like people love Spencer Lee, but when you see the top guy get knocked off, it just brings even more craziness. And so, Justin, before I let you go, I want to get a couple comments in here. This is from LV Warrior 1416. He says, "I like watching Bash as well. Him and Chenzo make it a great to watch." And so that's great.
Coming on this week, we should be doing an episode. He's getting settled in Arizona, but we've got some plans.
Okay.
We've got some fun stuff coming up. And Avery, to answer your question real quick about will Gable wrestle for Minnesota next season, I think the answer is if the WWE lets him. That's my opinion. I think Gable absolutely loves this sport. I think he loves the fans of Minnesota. And I think if you got to go with your future, which is WWE. I think he'll push for the WWE to let him. And if the WWE lets him, I think he will. And a topic I'll let Josiah debate himself on the next show is, should you leave your shoes on the mat if there's a potential comeback? I don't think you should. I love Gable, but I think if your shoes are on the mat, you're done. But now, if Gable came back, nobody's going to pout and say you left your shoes on the mat.
Well, the thing is, if Gable comes back, that could be a record-setting NCAA between Yanni going for a 4th title, Spencer going for a 4th title, and Gable coming back for his 3rd title. That could literally be, I mean, we could get over 1 million viewers. It was 800,000 some in 2013. I guess this is my last question for you, Batch. Yes or no, is wrestling growing?
Yeah. I mean, you have creators like you and me creating content that 10 years ago wasn't possible. It was only Flow Wrestling. It was only Track Wrestling. It was only these big companies. I think, you hit the nail on the head before I joined about women's wrestling. I think wrestling is men's and women's wrestling. And if you have, let's say, half your sector as one of the fastest growing sports recently, I think it's definitely growing. The fact that you and I can hop on a live stream and all these people are watching and, you have 30,000 subscribers. Congrats on that, by the way. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I think the fact that we can do this and the fact that wrestlers are so much more accessible now, where it's like 10 years ago, you couldn't find information about who is competing. Now you can follow them, see what they're eating, see how they're working out, see that David Carr's in, Davidson University today with Stephen Curry. Like, you can see that stuff now that you couldn't see 10 years ago. I think that's all because of growth. Yeah.
And I love that. Yeah. And you're doing such a phenomenal job yourself, Justin, helping to grow this sport through your interviews and through having these guys on as clients and teaching them, the marketing of themselves, right? Having their websites, doing all that. Bash Solutions is the company. And if you want to listen to if you want to listen to Justin's podcast, that's Baschamania right up there. You can find it right here on YouTube or on Apple or Spotify, right, Justin? Justin, I think your mic popped out a bit because I can't hear you, but wanted to say thanks for having you on. Again, everybody, you can follow Justin Basch, Baschamania, on all social media, on all podcasts, and can't wait to have you on for another show. And our next guest that we're bringing on in the next minute is Zach Bogle from Stalemates, and I cannot wait to get into this discussion because what he's doing, what Justin's doing with the interviews and with the marketing for these guys, Zach is doing such a phenomenal job with wrestling events, and we'll be talking about Street League. And it's oh boy, I'm just super psyched to get on this. But before I do that, I wanted to thank a couple of people. Ed Santiago, thank you for the super chat of $9.99. I mean, that's just huge in helping to grow the channel. One thing that my goal is to continue to do these live streams, keep getting super chats in, keep getting everybody excited about the sport. Matt Roca, man, thank you so much for joining as a channel member. It's so awesome to have you as a member. If that's something you want to do, is join at the 99-cent tier. You get exclusive emojis that you can join and use. And that's actually helping to grow the sport of wrestling into what I'm doing this season. Actually, I'll be telling you at the end of this show, like what exactly I'm doing to grow the sport of wrestling, because I know you're going to want to hear that. And you're also going to hear who's our next guest next week. But our guest right now that I am joined by is Zach Bogle of Stalemates, who's drinking, what is that, a Capri Sun?
Yeah, I'm on my work break, so I'm in my little closet right now. I had a Capri Sun in the fridge, so keeping it PG. How you doing? Happy birthday and congratulations on 30,000. That's amazing.
Well, thanks, Zach. I appreciate it. You know, turning 27, getting up there in age. Soon I'll be 30
It's my
years
age.
old. But
Hey,
for now, I'm happy with the 30,000 subs. Appreciate that very much. So, how are things going at the shop?
They've been going good. Things been going solid. We're getting ready for football season. The TVs will all have football on them, so I'm excited.
I love that. So, are you an Iowa State football fan as well?
Yeah. I'm pretty loyal that way. I don't like when people pick one team for this sport, but then this college has a better football team. So I'm not. So then I'm football here. So I'm pretty much Iowa State across the board.
Okay, no, I that's awesome. I'm a Penn Stater across the board. So, but you know that about me. I'm psyched because Penn State's playing on my birthday tomorrow, the first game of the year against Purdue. So,
Let's
college
go.
football season. I mean, this time I love the summer, I love the heat, but the fall is my favorite time of the year. Is that your favorite time of the year too?
Yeah, my birthday's Thanksgiving Day some years, so November 24th. So I've always loved fall. Plus, it's just the best weather, the best things going on. Wrestling is getting ready to get started. So yeah, it's great. I love
It's
the
crazy,
fall.
man, because it's like it's the fall. We're starting up here. September's tomorrow, and it seems like wrestling season is like right around the corner. Like basically 2 months from tomorrow, we're already having wrestle offs in October. Like, boy, how on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you anticipate in this wrestling season?
I would say right now it's about an 8. I'm kind of it would be a 10, but I'm waiting for kickoff first. But no,
Yes.
I'm excited. We've been starting to plan out what we're gonna do. We like to travel a lot, as you know. We've been down to Campbell. We've been to Arkansas. We've been kind of all over the. We're going to Cincinnati, Ohio this weekend to do an event with Barbarian Apparel.
Oh, cool.
So and that'll be on YouTube this weekend. So that's fun to watch. But yeah, I just like to travel and do things. And right now we're starting to plan how we want to do our content and what we want to do and all that. So I'm excited for it, but I'm sure you feel a little bit of the same thing about the season coming up. Is it can be stressful because you know how much more intense it gets when you got to stay on top of putting out content all the time. I like the off season personally because we can get a little bit more creative and kind of
Mhm.
space out our content. You do a lot more like weekly news stuff, so you're kind of like, I'm sure you have to be more timely and stuff. Where in the summer we can kind of space out what exactly we want to do,
Right.
whether it's make like little, storyline, more like graphics, just kind of be more creative with the editing and stuff. Where during the season it's kind of just like you don't have time, you just got to get it out and just kind of talk about things. And I don't know how much of your viewers really know who we are, what we do, but we cover wrestling from like a fan perspective rather than I'm not going to tell you who the best wrestler is or who's this or who's that. We kind of just talk about off the mat topics and like what we find funny or what we find entertaining and whatnot. So it's a different angle. So, we kind of be a little bit more flexible with what we do, but it does get stressful, during the season. You got to make sure that you're getting everything out on time.
Yeah, you better believe it. That's how I am too. Like the off season is really nice because that's when like I feel like I've actually made a lot of my biggest leaps like as a channel is because you're growing creatively. And by the way, like Zach and I have like conversations on a monthly basis. There's some of my favorite calls just because like we go super in depth about all the stuff growing on our channels. Because like Justin and I talked about, like even though we're both wrestling channels and in some senses like whatever competitors, but like we grow from each other, we learn from each other, and that's what I love so much. But like the biggest leaps are in the off season, and like right now, yeah, it's kind of nice because I can create this content. I'm doing weight by weight previews every week leading up to the season, but I'm trying to do them in different creative ways. And that's what I love is the creativity that you're bringing to the sport as well. And that we've seen a lot with wrestling events right now. So one of the things I want to get into is actually like, there's a lot of different unique wrestling events this season. Okay. So there's the Collegiate Classic, the Armbar at the Armory, the Wranglemania, the Collegiate Duels, Garden State Grapple. Wisconsin's having an event down in Florida. Flo's having a couple events in Austin, Texas. I mean, like it seems like, I mean, I don't remember having these type of events, and it may seem like something that's kind of was born in an extent out of the pandemic. Do you see these wrestling events as helping to grow the sport?
I mean, yeah, I don't want it to. Well, it depends on how you want to look at it, right? I don't like if it's going to get watered down, right? It used
Right.
to be you either went to like the Scuffle or Midlands. Like there's not a whole lot of these like kind of super tournaments going on. I really like some of the formats that they're doing. So I would love to see like a legitimate dual tournament go on. I know last year with the collegiate duels, the winners didn't line up. I'm sure the tournament directors and the people who put that on would have loved for a Penn State Iowa in December or whatever, like in a tournament style dual format. But I don't know. As long as it doesn't get too watered down, I don't think it ever hurts to have more wrestling. But I just, I sometimes I worry about, nobody. A lot of times these guys don't want to wrestle each other nearly as much, anyways, because they see each other so much, especially if you're a Big Ten school. So, as long as it doesn't get too watered down, I think it's good. I think more wrestling is always good.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is like with these events, it's you don't want to water it down. You also don't want it to be too like gimmicky. Like that's what I think happens a lot with whatever it is, like maybe newer wrestling podcasts or wrestling shows or wrestling on social media, especially like from a lot of big programs. It's like everybody's got to have a takedown Tuesday or a coach's corner. Like let's come up. Just because you have a catchy name doesn't make it like interesting. So let's
Right.
actually have something kind of cool about it that helps grow the sport. And so like one of the things that you've done, you and Tyler has helped with growing wrestling, I believe, is with Street League. So for those who aren't familiar, let us know what Street League is and like where that was built out of and like what's so like, I mean, to me, it's neat. So just talk to me about Street League a bit.
So yeah, we started it kind of right after the pandemic. Whenever the what was it going on? Like the Rockfin channels were putting on
Mm-hmm.
their own cards, like Penn State that had their own, and I'm trying to think of Iowa had their own on track wrestling. Just a lot of people I felt like were kind of starting to create their own tournaments and their own pay-per-view events and whatnot. And so Flo was doing a lot of stuff as well. So I thought, you know, we were growing a lot, and I was like, why don't we just go ahead and throw our own event? But it's got to fit like our brand. And
Right.
like I mentioned earlier, our brand, we like to think that we're a little bit more on the creative side. We try to do things differently. So I was like, how are we going to do things differently? And I watch a lot of YouTube. I know just a lot of times when you and I talk, it's basically about YouTube and not really wrestling. But
Yeah.
there's a YouTube channel out there. I'm giving too many free shout outs, so I'm sorry, but there's a YouTube channel out there called Street Beefs, which is essentially you got two guys who have some sort of beef in the streets, and they go and they would fight each other in like chain link fenced octagon in someone's backyard. I think in the Baltimore area. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But so I thought we would have a similar thing. Now I wasn't going to go get two people who have like beef or nothing like that, but
Mhm.
I was like, well, what if we got two guys who want to wrestle each other? Like, we all have friends and stuff like, hey, come, let's, we all have friends that wrestled and everything. And so I was like, maybe we could try to build some sort of storylines. Maybe we could get a guy who's super like, redneck and country boy versus a guy that's, I don't know, a city slicker or whatever. Like we
Uh,
were just trying to or we thought maybe one would be cool if it was like a cop versus a firefighter, like just stuff like that,
right.
kind of built in storyline. So whenever we started thinking about, doing our own event where like we have to do something different, I was like, let's do something like Street Beefs. And it started where we were like, let's just go put a mat in someone's like field or backyard and just put a tripod up and film it. And then we can highly edit it and just make a video kind of about it.
Mhm.
Then that turned into like, if you're going to do that, you need insurance. So you're going to have to pay, insurance fees. Well, if you have insurance, you might as well insure 10 matches. Well, if you have 10 matches, people are going to want to come. And then that turned into selling tickets. The first one sold out. We sold like 80% of our tickets in like 30 minutes and like paid for the whole thing. So it was, the first one really was like kind of magical to us. And we're like, okay, maybe we have something here. And then at the time, Pat Downey was kind of beefing with Cayden over something dumb. I think Pat was like purposely trying to get himself on the card because we had been DMing, and I kind of was not really so responsive because I didn't know if I wanted to have Pat on the thing just with everything that has gone on with him. And so I was like, kind of on the fence. Well, then I think he started a beef with Cayden out of spite because he knew Cayden, was around, and Cayden was like familiar with the brand and stuff. So that beef kind of started happening. And then I messaged Cayden. I'm like, hey, do you want to like wrestle? I was like, do you really want to do this? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And so it literally, now it's like, okay, we had a bunch of guys who were like old, retired, shout out to Grandview University. They were all there and like put on a awesome display of the crowd. Like they just were wild. So it went from like having like a bunch of former wrestlers to all of a sudden we had like Cayden on, who, me being a big Iowa State fan, I mean, that's like a dream come true to even be around someone like Cayden.
Absolutely.
And so it just kind of really started blowing up from there. And then obviously Pat didn't show up, which kind of made it bigger. And then we did a second one, and we ended up doing 3 within a 365-day year. So it was cool.
I didn't realize it was 3 within that 365-day year. That's actually really impressive. And
two in 2021 and 1 in 2022, but 365 days we did 3.
Right, and the cool thing is too, like outside of that, over on your Patreon. By the way, it's Stalemates over on Patreon. It's $3.99 right to join and per month, and you get these wrestling events, which are one of the most unique events that I've seen put on. In fact, we've had a couple people in the comments that have seen them, and this Opaka 512 says he loves Street League and the content Stalemates creates, and he also said that he wants to get put in. I mean, it seems like he wants to put on the card. And so Zach, like I really think that what you and Tyler are doing over at Stalemates is incredible. And just like Bash said, it's different. Like we're all wrestling content creators putting out different wrestling content that's, in my opinion, is helping to grow the sport. But my question for you, Zach, is with all these events, yes or no, as you're taking a sip of that Capri Sun, which I just find so funny, is wrestling growing?
I think so. I mean, I think from an audience standpoint, it is. I'm not so sure about the numbers of like kids signing up for. Is that what you mean? Do you mean like from an audience standpoint, or are you talking about the sport overall, or like as far as like kids actually participating?
That's the funny thing, is because at the beginning of the show, that's what I said. I said there's many ways to measure this. It's women's versus men's, it's participation, it's viewership rates, it's all these things. So just from an overall perspective, and you can spin that however you want, like, but do you think wrestling's growing, like, based on any of those statistics? I'd say overall.
I'm gonna lead more on the positive, optimistic side and say yes. I would say yes, just because I think niche sports overall are growing right now. If you've seen kind of what's happened post-pandemic, a lot more people are watching streams and not really going the traditional cable route. And I think for the longest time, wrestling kind of had to fight for its space within like traditional cable TV. Now it's still difficult to stream things, as we know. We've had our difficulty in our last one streaming stuff, and obviously Flow's had their trouble, but I think it used to be really hard to like get airtime, right? And now it's pretty easy. I mean, if you really wanted to go pretty grassroots with it, anybody could take their phone out and go live on YouTube or Facebook. And I think as technology advances in cameras and software gets easier and easier, and things will get cheaper and cheaper. And then next thing you know, you can watch wrestling. You already can watch wrestling like kind of whenever. And I think the more people get involved, like ourselves, and you guys streamed one last year for free on YouTube. I think that's what kind of needs to happen with wrestling. Right now, Flow's the biggest thing in wrestling, and they've done a lot for our sport. But I've always had trouble with the annual subscription only
Mhm.
paywall and stuff. It's really hard to get somebody. Imagine trying to tell your friend that, you know, you want to watch this wrestler, but they got to pay $150 for a whole entire year. So I think that kind of sucks. But now that the internet's getting easier to stream things, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or whatever it is, and we're starting to see wrestling kind of like more free content with wrestling. Like ideally, I would love Street League to be completely free. Yes,
Mhm.
we only charge $3.99. You can cancel literally right after the event's over. But I think for wrestling to really grow, we got to start giving out free content and stuff. And that was kind of the goal with what we wanted to do, is like everything in wrestling, for in my mind at the time, was like behind a paywall, like
Right.
flow and track and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with charging for content, but in terms of like really growing the sport, so when I started doing research, I'm like, oh wait, there's this Fanco guy who's like got a ton of subscribers, and then like, you know, guys like Cayden and stuff, and then if you're gonna start streaming duels and we start streaming duels, it's gonna be so much easier for the sport to grow as a whole if you can just give it away for free, and then, you know, you build up a demand, and then later on down the road the money comes, right?
Right.
So I think for the longest time we've just dealt with like trying to get people to watch. It's like it used to be like impossible to even watch. Now it's so much better.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that's a really good response, Zach. And I appreciate having you on because there's a lot of insights there, to whether you should continue to, or to whether we should put things behind a paywall or not. Because that's the thing, is like you see a lot of churn rate, a lot of turnover with like new people who want to grow wrestling, want to have these podcasts, but they also can't, like, they got to be able to support themselves in some ways. So I totally get that. Like I totally get the good, the bad, and the ugly behind it all. And it's definitely something that I'm dealing with too. And Zach, I appreciate having you on. I know you got to get back to work, but appreciate it. Everybody can find you over Stalemates on Patreon or any social media, over on YouTube. That's the best place to find you, right, Zach?
That's the best place. And thank you so much. You're the GOAT at YouTube. I don't care what anybody says. I've been on the Fanco train for a few years now. I've met you in person. This guy really is as good of a person in person as he is online. So shout out to the Fanco army for supporting this guy. And he's got more balls than me because he does it full time, and that's just crazy. I respect that so much, that you're full time with it. It's good for you.
Well, thanks, Zach. I really appreciate that, man. I'm looking forward to our next conversation already. And you get back to work, and I'll talk to you soon, man. And so it's been an awesome night so far. Cayden Henschel is about to join us. Make sure if you got any questions for him as we're getting on, that you leave those down in the comments in the chat. We have so many awesome chats coming in already. We had Jordan Babcock just recently join the channel, and I want to thank you, Jordan, for joining the channel membership. You see everybody in the chat that has badges next to their name or that has the emojis. It's because they are channel members. They are the official Fanco Fanatics. And it's really cool that as well they're getting extra content. I also want to thank Preston, who gave $30 for 30K subs. Congrats, and keep up the amazing content, is what Preston said. Preston, thank you so much. It's awesome to have, you know, the Fanco Fanatics supporting. And it's absolutely incredible. And the next guy that I'm bringing on started YouTube around the same time that I did, and man, has his channel grown exponentially. One of the things that I loved hearing during the time that he was growing was his journey to win a state title, and that is Cayden Henschel, who now has over 120,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I'm definitely proud of him. Cayden, how's the school year been so far for you, man?
Well, let's just say I didn't even move in yet. We're super late behind. We move in. I think I move in on Sunday. But I'm so excited to get back. I'm just ready for summer to be end, wrestling season to start. But happy birthday, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Congratulations once again. It's been a fun stream. I've stuck around the whole time and couldn't stop watching. So I'm happy to be here.
It's been awesome to have you, Cayden. I appreciate you joining. You know, it's been quite the journey too, since back in 2019, right? Did you start in? I started in January of 2019, my channel, and like officially. But did you? I think you had some videos out before that. But when did you officially go like kind of all in on the wrestling content?
Well, so I did make content my sophomore year of high school, and that was in I think it was 2017. But then that channel got terminated. Don't know why. Don't ask questions, guy. I have no idea. But that 2018 in the summer is when I kind of fully committed to just wrestling content, and I've just been going ever since. my junior year of high school. So now I'm going into my third year in college.
That's awesome. We see chats coming in already. Landville and Payson said, Cayden rules. We see EJ Newton says, what's the name of his YouTube channel? His YouTube channel is Cayden Henschel. It's as simple as his name. And you can go back and watch even some of his older videos because, I mean, I definitely appreciate the new ones because they're so much higher quality, but I think the older ones too are still great because it's his story to become a state champion. Now, one of the videos that you did recently and is one that I was wanting to ask you about, and LV Warrior asked, Cayden, how did you get the opportunity to meet up with Spencer Lee? I want to ask you, how was that meeting with Spencer Lee, challenging him? Was that like a dream come true for you, man?
Oh, dude, okay. So what I always think is that you want to get as many opportunities as you can, and it's going to be scary. You don't have to know how to do it. You just have to be open to do it. You can figure it out later. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I've reached out to him before in the DMs on Instagram, and we could never really agree on doing, you know, certain things, and he maybe wasn't open to it at the start. But now he was open to me, you know, creating this video with him. And I was super stoked. I mean, okay, what can we do? Well, first off, we can't wrestle. He's recovering from double ACL surgery. I mean, we all know this. And I still had a lot of questions like, why didn't you wrestle Spencer? He's recovering from double ACL surgery. But I mean, nonetheless, we had a great lifting session and we talked a ton. I mean, as soon as we got there, as soon as we walked in the door, it's been like nonstop conversation the entire time. I mean, he's just a great dude to be around, super focused. And you can see that, like, I've never met someone as like dialed in, like in my life. And for him to be like people say Spencer Lee is the GOAT. I mean, 3-time national champ, you know, we can clearly see that, you know, he blows everyone out of the water with, you know, with points. I don't even know what his closest match was, but if you're going to win a national title with no ACLs, you're clearly, you know, a freak in nature. And it was just a real honor to make this video. And I was so happy to see people like that kind of video, and hopefully I can do it with other wrestlers here down the line.
No, I think that's great. I love the uniqueness that you brought to that you're bringing to the content, because there's no wrestling channel out there that's creating this type of content that you're creating. And I love this Spencer video. It was so cool, man. I'm so happy that you had the opportunity to go out and meet him and to challenge him, even without the ACLs. The one thing that I thought, so I mentioned American Ninja Warrior earlier in the stream with Bash, but I was watching these guys climb the rope last night on the finale of Mount Midoriyama. Have you seen American Ninja Warrior?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. So the stage 4, they got to climb 75 feet in the rope in 30 seconds, and I'm like, man, I bet you Spencer could do that. And I bet you could do it too. But I would love to see each of you guys try that, because holy cow, like that rope climb. How many did he say he could do in a couple, like in
one go? I think he said his highest was like 9 in a row. And for that rope, I think it's about like maybe 8 feet higher than the rope at my school at Parkside. But still, like, I mean, once you get up there, it feels like the rope's never ending. Like, you're just going and going. Of course, it gets tiring, but I can only imagine going up there, going back down, like, you know, 8 more times and then still going back up. It's absolutely absurd. And, you know, he even said the record was like someone got 14. No, like, I don't know. That's just crazy on another level. But
it sure is crazy on another level. Like when you were showing the workout, like all the stuff he was doing, it was just like I couldn't believe it, man. Like, you know how powerful he is, how good of a wrestler he is, but when you see this stuff like actually happening, it's nuts. And so one of the things I want to ask you about, Cayden, is like your YouTube channel. It's for wrestlers, but you have other content that you've that you've done as well, like kind of what's going on in your life. You just moved into a new house, your family. You did the vlog series where you ran a marathon. And so the thing that I want to ask you about, though, Cayden, is your friends, right? Do you have any friends that aren't wrestlers that like watch your content? I'm curious.
So yeah, I definitely do have, you know, some old friends from high school. You know, we still hang out here sometimes in the summer. It's really great to see. But of course, you know, those guys, probably no one has seen them on my channel, or maybe if they scroll on my Instagram a long ways. But on social media, it's hard because, you know, in high school, you know, you're just a kid, you just post like just any other kid. But then you're like, oh, okay, once you start to get followers, and okay, maybe you think you should start making, you know, money off this because you're putting so much time into it, you know, because you don't want to work a job or something. But yeah, I think, I mean, I do have a ton of wrestling friends, but still like having those guys that you still see at the weight room or still your buddies from like school back in the day. It's still nice to see, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're with those guys every day, your teammates and everything, and so it makes sense. That's why, like, I mean, that's typically how it works, right? If you're playing softball, you're mostly friends with the softball team from high school into college. If you're a football player, it's the same thing. If you're a wrestler, it's just you're around those people so much. Obviously, you're gonna be friends with them, but like with the people who aren't into wrestling, were you able to bring them in to wrestling? Like for example, like your girlfriend, was she interested in wrestling at first before you started dating or no?
No, she's never been to like a wrestling match, or I don't even know if she's ever like even heard of it or thought it was an option until like we got together, and then she went to a tournament, and I was and then like I thought it was weird that kind of she hasn't, but at the same time I was like, I bet you don't know wrestling, because I guess no one does at school. It's a select group of people, but she was really open to it, and of course that's why I'm still with her today, I think. Kelsey, I know she's watching, so love you, Kelsey.
Well, shout out to her. Those are the great things, right? Is because my girlfriend, now fiance, like she did not know anything about wrestling when we first started dating, and we started dating in high school as well. It was our sophomore year. She knew nothing, and then she ended up coming to the matches. I was able to teach her a little bit about how things work. But that's some of the great things, right? Is because through that, like once you really get kind of ingrained in the sport, it is like you're interested in it, right? And she'll watch the Big Ten matches with me or the NCAA championships. Well, I guess I'm there and she's watching it at home, which is still kind of cool. But like, you've also been through like so much together in your relationship, which I think is so cool. Those stories that you share, she was with you from the time that you wanted to win that state title. Like, I think that's so neat and helps build that relationship so much. And so how important do you think it is to educate others about wrestling, having seen like with her interest in wrestling now? Like, how important do you think it is to teach others so that we can grow the sport?
Well, of course, I think it's the most important thing. I do think the easiest way to do that is through social media. As we all know, you can just anyone can post a video, anyone can see that video, and that's going to be the easiest way to reach kind of a massive audience. But in person, I remember in middle school, people would ask me like, what's that on your shirt? I'd always be wearing a wrestling shirt, and I got some guys in, and they've stuck it out through high school. And kind of just thinking back, it's like crazy to think that they've never wrestled before, but it was just kind of these little moments of just maybe wearing something. Shout out to Fanco Wrestling merch. But like if I'm wearing this and someone sees me like at a store, it'll be like what's that shirt? Or like, something like that, just to have these little like, signs. It can start the conversation, and it can, get people talking. And next thing you know, their kids out at the local wrestling tournament, joining a club or something.
Absolutely. And that's the funny thing too is, I think it's awesome that you have the Fanco Wrestling shirt on. I think it's so cool. And I've seen it in your videos as well.
Love it. I love that shirt.
But also, like, I'll have my Rudis shoes on, and people are always like, man, like, what shoes are those? Those are kind of cool. And I'm like, it's actually like a wrestling specific lifestyle, like, company. Like all my entire closet is basically Rudis gear. From their have you had their next to nothing shirts, by the way?
No, I don't think I think I have a couple shirts, but I don't think.
Man, I'm telling you right now, you need to get the next to nothing shirt. It's really? Like it's the softest shirt I have. I wear them like I just want to keep buying more and more because they're that good. By the way, not a Rudis sponsorship or anything. Just I just think it's that great to be.
Well, Rudis, if you want to sponsor me or Josiah, we're right here. So
absolutely, and I love by the way the sponsored content that you've been doing, Cayden. You do a phenomenal job not only on YouTube, as you see the 100,000 subscriber play button behind you, which getting to 1 million in a couple years. I know you will, but also on your Instagram as well. And so before I get to the last question, because I think all of that has been important, right? Is talking about seeing a lot of this stuff like outside of somebody who doesn't know wrestling, like seeing the gear, seeing the root of stuff, seeing a wrestling shirt, I think is important. Talking to people who may not know about wrestling or inviting them to watch a match is important. And I'm going to ask you, just as I asked Bash, just as I asked Zach from Stalemates, like if you think wrestling is growing. But first, I wanted to hit a couple of these chats with you because I know you're going to like them. The first question is from Landville, who asked, Cayden, can you lift a 150-pound dumbbell now?
I could maybe bring it off the rack. I couldn't pull up with it at all. I think I could be able to take it off. I didn't try. I wish I did.
I think it was great. How much were you lifting earlier? And I saw the reel you posted today on.
That was shoulder press. So that was 75s in each hand. And beginning of the summer, I literally, like, you can go back on the video. I couldn't even get one rep. And in that video, I cut out reps. So I think I ended up getting like 6 or something. But I just hit a new bench PR today, 275. I was so hyped.
Let's go, man. Congrats. Keep that up, man, as you get into the season. We also got one from EJ Newton who said, gonna subscribe to his channel now. So thank you, EJ, for subscribing. Avery Gaming says, YouTube legend. Talking about
right there,
which is awesome. Love hearing that. And there's so much great. And one of the next things I want to bring up, Cayden K asks, what's up, Cayden? Same name, but spelled differently. What are some of the best workouts you do for wrestling? And Cayden actually has his own Patreon where he answers a lot of these questions, where he goes deep into the workouts that he's done that took him from being becoming a state champion to eventually becoming a wrestler in college. Is there any on the top of your head? I know that's a general question that you like doing kind of often.
Climbing rope. I mean, it's essential. It's, just like resting your grip strength, perfect right there. But also just like unlike weight room workouts, if you guys aren't doing like push-ups, sit-ups, squats, pull-ups, like every single day, like what are you doing? You got to, you're going to use it or lose it. So one thing before, when I was younger, whenever I played video games, my dad would always say, you got to get 50 push-ups, 50 squats, and 50 pull-ups before you play video games. And this is a daily thing. And I did that, for whatever it was, like 5 years until I kind of slowed down on the video games. But just doing those things, keeping your body moving and make sure you're replenishing yourself, having the right amount of protein and, getting, on creatine in the summer if you're down for that or open to that. But just kind of keeping your body moving, doing things that, maybe you're sitting around, you're like, what is my competition doing? And be like, what if he's doing push-ups? All right, I'm going to do more push-ups than he is. What if he's doing pull-ups? I'm going to do as many as I can right now. Just keeping that exercise going, and you're going to have a great mindset and you're going to see some success.
I love that. And it's a very simple approach, right?
Yeah.
But that's actually how I run a lot. That's my exercise. But what I started doing actually within the past 2 months is few times a day, like anytime I have a little bit of dead time or I'm getting ready to do something, I just drop down and do push-ups, and then I installed a pull-up bar in my office so I can do push-ups and pull-ups so I can just keep going throughout the day. And I also have like a standing desk, but like that little thing, like you do it before video games or in between commercials, right? It really does build up that strength. And that's one of the things Spencer said too, right? Is like, he said one of the only things he does is pull-ups, right? Like,
well, this is the first year he's been like lifting, and everything he does, it's still in the pulling motion. I mean, if you guys didn't learn anything from that video, just do as many pull-ups as you can, as often as you can, and then you'll get, the grip strength of Spencer Lee. Of course, he's been doing that for like 12 years now, but.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Like there's the story I heard recently with Dayton Fix, who did 100,000 push-ups in a year. But just like Cayden's approach, it's like, you think about what your competition is doing, right? Too, but also like you think about, you break that down. Okay, 100,000 push-ups a year. How many do I have to do in a day? It was like 300 in a day. Okay, well, can I do them? Can I do like 25 per whatever half hour? I'm doing math randomly real quick, but like it's that type of thing that just adds up. And so the two more things, Cayden. Spanky says 100K subs. Awesome, Cayden. I know Spanky's somebody who watches both channels, and he's excited about that. And last question for you before I ask you about wrestling growing or not. Jason asked, "Is Cayden a gamer?" You mentioned gaming. Do you game, Cayden?
Listen, all right. If there's some nights at college specifically when the guys are like, let's hop in Fortnite. We're playing Fortnite. Lately this summer, my brother and his friends have been getting into Pokemon Go. Now I know it's like whatever. I played it right when it came out in 2016, but I might
Right.
be a little addicted to that. I might need to tone it down. But yeah, I do enjoy games every once in a while.
I love that, man. I love I love that you're in the Pokemon Go. I can't believe that's still going on because I
Yeah.
played that for like 2 weeks when it first came out. And so Cayden, it's been a great conversation, and I loved all the points you've been talking about, what you've been doing with your YouTube channel to grow wrestling. So my question for you that I'm going to leave you with before I get into what I'm specifically doing to grow wrestling this season and who my guest is next week, which you're going to want to tune in for. Cayden, is wrestling growing? Yes or no?
For me, I do think the answer is yes. We all know that kind of once you get in wrestling, it's kind of almost like a cult. You're in it for life. You're always interested in it. Maybe your kids are going to wrestle because if you wrestle, the chain goes on. And for the people who comment on my videos, that's like that haven't experienced wrestling before, they're like, wow, you made me try out wrestling. You're like, do you think I should try out for wrestling? Like when I tell you, I get over the years, thousands upon thousands of people saying do you think I should try wrestling? The answer is always yes, because I know that it impacted my life in such a way that I know that I want to have that experience through them to show them and teach them that it's really once you wrestle, everything else in life is easy, as Dan Gable says. But it's such a blessing. But I do think it's growing, but there's still a lot of work to do.
There's still a lot of work to do, and we'll both be doing our part to grow the sport and sharing everything with others. I think that was such a great answer, and I agree with you so much on that, Cayden. It was awesome having you on tonight, and I know you got to get back to. Do you have any studying to do yet?
No, thankfully no.
Awesome. Best place to find Cayden is over on YouTube, Cayden Henschel, and on social media everywhere, Cayden Henschel. That's Cayden Henschel. And Cayden, that's the best place to find you, right?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Awesome, man. I look forward to our next conversation and talking with you very soon. Best of luck to you this season, man.
Thank you, Josiah. It's been a pleasure.
Later, man. And so let's get into what I am doing to grow the sport of wrestling, because we've had a great conversation tonight, right? We're talking with Justin about what is happening with wrestling, with whether Penn State's dominance has actually hindered the sport of wrestling or helped it grow, with Stalemates and talking about the wrestling events. And Cayden just recently talked about what he's doing over on YouTube and with Spencer Lee growing the sport of wrestling. I think it's been fantastic. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to be answering some of your questions as well. Because there have been so many that have come in that I just want to get to. And, we see Justin Helen already says being a Fanco Fanatic is great. And that's one way that you can help support this channel as we get on with our growth. Thank you, Justin, for being a Fanco Fanatic. It's awesome to have you. We see just so many awesome comments coming in. So what am I doing to grow the sport of wrestling this season? And this is something different than I've done in the past. Actually, it's something that I'm excited to continue to grow the channel with. And you who are listening right now, you're getting a very inside look at what to expect with the channel this season. And I'm hoping it's absolutely huge. So one of the things that I want to do, or that I will be doing, is live stream events. Or not events, live streams. And I want to make them event, right? Like tonight, this was a fun event that we put on with these other wrestling media entities, with all these other wrestling YouTubers. That's been fun. And I hope that you've been enjoying the chat tonight. By the way, if you've been enjoying this live stream, comment yes. Just comment in the chat below, yes, I've been enjoying it. Or give me a thumbs up emoji so that I know you've been enjoying this chat and want to continue to do that, because I want to continue doing live interviews. We had the one on with the Hidley brothers just a month ago, and I want to do weekly interview series live here on YouTube where you can join. And my next guest next week, oh boy, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be really great. I'll tell you who that is in a second. So that's one thing I want to do. But on top of that, one of the things that we did last season here with Johnny J. Rock Johnson was actually doing the live stream watch-alongs, right? During the Penn State and Michigan match, during the Iowa and Penn State match, which was a blast. We had, I think, over 20,000 views on that video. So many people were watching that live stream, and I want to continue to do those watch alongs. And if you want to see more of those watch alongs, comment, yes, I want to see more watch alongs. Right now, comment, yes, I want to see more watch alongs, because that's something I'm helping do to grow wrestling. Because we had a lot of fun during those. And if I am able to get somebody else on with me, whether it's Johnny J. Rock Johnson or another college wrestler, I'm looking to do that to grow the sport. I'm also looking to travel around to different dual meets this season so I can get you more in-depth coverage. I want to give you more coverage at these events where I'm going. I want like the national championships. If you watch those kind of series that I did over those couple days, giving you background at what you see if you're at the national championships or what exactly was happening with the news. I think it's a new scenery that shows you what's going on, but it's also like a lot of fun to do. And I know that you enjoy that content. So that's something I'm wanting to do. And not only that, but remember last year where I had a couple people I had a couple team members go to Arizona State to film matches. I had a couple go to the Iowa and Ohio State match. That was such a fun night for those team members, but also that's able to get you coverage, right? Like I can't be everywhere in one weekend, but I'm able to bring team members on who are able to get these matches, this match side coverage, these interviews after the match. And that's one thing that I want to continue to give you. So that's something though, that the interviews I'm going to be putting behind for Fanco Fanatics only. And I'll get to that in a second. But the fifth thing, I forget what number I'm on right now. One of the things that I want to tell you about is, and I'm super psyched about this, is I'm going to start touring wrestling facilities. So I already have one scheduled with Campbell, and I'm looking to get around the North Carolina area first. I want to get Duke, NC State, UNC, tour those wrestling facilities, give you an inside look. Because there's other tour videos out there. There's one that I watched today where it's supposed to be a tour, and like it was literally just an interview with the with the wrestling room as a background. No, I want to give you like an awesome look at the facilities. If you're familiar with Destroying on YouTube, he does those for football. Well, I want to give you an inside look at what the facilities look like, whether you're a recruit looking to go to college or whether you are just interested in what those facilities actually look like. And from there, I want to expand from North Carolina, go to Pitt, go to Ohio State, go to Iowa, maybe go to Penn State if Coach Sanderson will let me in. Those are the things I want to do. Now, if you are interested in this, if you want to see more match coverage on site, if you want to see more interviews, if you want to see live interviews, if you want to see facility tours, if you want me to do all this stuff, one great way to support the endeavors is by becoming a Fanco Fanatic. We've already gifted memberships tonight to join Fanco Fanatics. And there are multiple tiers to join. At the 99-cent level is still a great way to join. It's $1 a month. And I'm willing to bet you may have $1 a month if you love wrestling content. You get channel emojis, you get a badge next to your name. The tier above that is behind the scenes, where I share my interviews. I share the behind the scenes of what's going on in the channel with posts every single week. And my favorite tier, which isn't the highest, it's the $4.99 tier. So $5 a month. So what, a coffee a month to help support and grow wrestling, to help support Fanco. And I'm telling you, it seriously does help so much. Is you get the behind the scenes video. I just recently filmed a video breaking down the collegiate wrestling duels and the teams that are going to be there, what I think the pools are going to look like. I share, really neat videos, match breakdowns, match reactions, quick news that if maybe I don't have time to edit a full video, but I can break down that news. That's at the $4.99 level. And then at the $9.99 level is where you'll get a free guide. So that don't forget, my preview guide to the NCAA championships are coming back at the end of October. And if you are super psyched to see that guide coming back, comment guide in the chat below so I can see that you're super psyched about this, because there's a lot to look forward to this season. And if you do want to see that, as I said, the best way is to join the Fanco Fanatics at whatever tier you're able to. 99 cents, $1.99, $4.99, or $9.99. It's a great way to support the channel, and I'd love for you to join us, to join the Fanco Fanatics behind the scene. And now we're going to take a couple more chats. But first, I want to say thank you to all the Fanco Fanatics that have been with me since the beginning, since 2019, and that have made the interview next week that I'm going to be doing very much possible. And the interview, get ready for this, the interview that I'll be doing next week is planned for next Thursday at 6 p.m. is with a Penn Stater. Roman Bravo Young will be on the channel next Thursday live on Fanco Wrestling. And man, I am psyched for it. I am super psyched to be talking with him about everything going on in his life. If you're psyched for it, like spam the chat. Spam the chat with boom, psyched, whatever emotion. Like on a scale, yeah. RBY is going to be there. I'm super psyched. And so that is made possible by you, by the Fanco Fanatics, by you who are deciding to financially support the Fanco Wrestling and all of the endeavors. Because a year ago on Friday, I quit my job. Okay? I quit my job a year ago on this Friday. It was the day after my birthday. And now here we are, interviewing some of the best wrestlers, some of the best in wrestling media, going to these wrestling events. And it's thanks to you that we're able to do this. So let's take a couple chats. We see everybody super psyched about RBY. We see Darian Johnson, RBY, Spanky commenting, boom. Alberto says RBY, super psyched. We see Jason Brantley, RBY. Jordan Babcock says, psyched for you in the channel. Love RBY's wrestling. Love the level of guests for your channel even more. Everybody's super psyched about this, and I'm super psyched as well. So let's get to a couple comments here in the chat. And one of the questions that first comes up is from Daniel Giusti. Sorry, I'm definitely pronouncing that last name wrong. He says, who do you like better, Jason Nolf or Bo Nickel? Oh man, that's tough. I gotta say, wrestling-wise, I enjoyed watching Jason Nolf just a little bit better. Like, even though I loved watching Bo, Nolf was definitely like the guy that I just thought he was unbeatable, man. Love that. So I'm going Nolf. So thank you, Daniel, for that question. Dragunov, the Tsar, who's, I believe earlier said he's joining from Brazil. So welcome from Brazil. He says, I have two questions. The first, do you think about going to MMA in the future? I don't know if this has already been discussed. So a couple years ago when I started in 2019, I was covering all kinds of college wrestling. I was covering high school. I was covering freestyle. I was covering D1 wrestling. I was covering occasionally women's wrestling. I was covering all this stuff. And I really narrowed down to I just cover D1 college wrestling. And if it relates to that, then I'll cover it, right? Like they're high school recruits that are going to college, right? So it makes sense to cover that. If a wrestler, a D1 wrestler is fighting in MMA, I'll cover that. But I don't think that I don't plan to go strictly over to MMA or do MMA videos. I have an upcoming video that's about wrestlers who've gone to the MMA. But like seeing the success of the Bo Nickel video that I put out just a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, like it has over 150,000 views. It's hard not to ignore that there's a base that wants to see that. And so as long as it relates to D1 wrestling, I am interested in covering it. And so the next question, or the next comment from Spanky says, Spencer is a warrior. Couldn't agree more, Spanky there. LV Warrior says, Spencer Lee is the toughest wrestler I've ever seen. How many wrestlers would compete with 2 torn ACLs and win a national title? I'll tell you, not many. Not many. He is the toughest. He's the baddest dude around. And if you saw my recent video I did breaking down Spencer and if anybody can beat him, I broke that down. I don't think anybody can beat him, but with 2 ACLs hurt, anything's up for grabs, but he's still, the toughest dude around. Any advice for young wrestlers to enjoy the grind? Dax Picture asked that. And, to enjoy the grind, I started wrestling in the 4th grade. And by the way, if you wrestled, let me know in the comments right now. When did you start wrestling? How old were you when you started? I was in the 4th grade. One of the things I would say is, I don't know if you're a younger wrestler, Dax, or if you're a parent asking for younger wrestlers, but I would say, one, enjoy it, right? When you're young, you should be enjoying the sport. And this is one of the things Jordan Burroughs has talked about too. And I don't want to put words in Jordan Burroughs' mouth, but like, because he knows a lot more about wrestling than I do. But enjoy it when you're younger. Don't be cutting weight. There were teammates of mine who were cutting weight in the 5th grade. Come on now. I mean, maybe if it's like a half a pound, okay. You have to skip one meal or eat a little bit leaner. You shouldn't be cutting weight, in my opinion, when you're that young. I think when you get a little bit older, middle school, I think is more okay. That's when I started cutting a little bit of weight myself, like a few pounds here and there. High school, and I know that there's a lot of controversial opinions about this, about like when you should be cutting weight, when you shouldn't be cutting weight. And let me know that too. When do you think you should be cutting weight? How old do you think you should be? I think middle school. High school, it's like you kind of know your body by then. You know what you can handle, what you can't handle. Heck, I lost 15 pounds in a day one time. I can tell you that story later. I'd lose like 20 some pounds. And the funny thing is, like, I weighed about the same as I do now as I was in my senior year of high school. And I cut down to 132. And that was just crazy. And so LV Warrior says, Penn State fan and MC represent home of the Hidleys. Yes, heck yeah. We are big friends of the Hidleys here on this channel. We love them. And we'll be supporting Trent this season. Of course, Trent and Aaron Brooks, I'm looking forward to that matchup, but that's a tough wait. How do you think Steve Pullen will do this year? I mean, it's for any freshman, right? I don't know that he's going to be like the freshman phenom that Spencer Lee was, or even NATO, but I think he can definitely help the team. I think it's too early to tell. Give it the beginning of the season. We'll see how tournaments are for him. I think he can be a stud for sure. I think he could be a stud for sure. Jordan Babcock says Fanco chomping at the bit for 100,000 subs. Yeah, absolutely. But first, trying to get to 50K. That's the next goal. 50K by December. Do you think we could do that? Is the Fanco jersey shipped internationally? Unfortunately, we do not ship internationally for our merchandise. Thomas Penaflor says, this is my favorite channel. I can't tell you how much that means to me, Thomas, because I love watching YouTube, right? I literally grew up on YouTube. I started watching YouTube back in 2007 when there was hardly anybody on it. I mean, the people that I mentioned to you now, like, especially for you younger wrestlers who like watching YouTube, you probably have never even heard of them because they're like extinct off of YouTube now. But I grew up on YouTube and I have my favorite content creators. I have my favorite YouTube channels. Still to this day, I have my favorite YouTube channels. And I'm interested in knowing, by the way, Thomas says Fanco is his favorite YouTube channel. Who's your favorite YouTube channel? My favorite right now is Mr. Beast. I love watching Mr. Beast, and he's a North Carolinian. Lives an hour up the way from me. I'd love to to go to his campus. But like when you say that, Thomas, that Fanco is your favorite channel, it just means the world to me because I love YouTube as well. And so the next question that I have is Darian Johnson said he started wrestling the 1st or 2nd grade. Alberto started wrestling in the 9th grade. Dax said he's a parent for wrestlers. So getting back to that, yeah, Dax, I just think it's important to, as a youth wrestler, to be able to enjoy the sport when you're young. You're going to learn the discipline. You're going to learn the characteristics of a good wrestler. And it's still fine to have, the tougher workouts for that age group. I'd say getting involved with a bunch of the friends, like, is important. Learning that discipline. But I would stay away from, like, yelling at the youth when they're that young. I've seen that too many times with parents like hitting their kids or yelling at them for losing. It's something that I don't disagree or I don't agree with at that young age. Like, and I think there are better ways. I'm not a parent myself, but I've seen what others do and how they treat their sons and what they get into. Um, and I don't think it's good to, like, ream out your kid for losing a match, especially at a young age. So I'd say enjoy it as best as they can. Let them get excited for wrestling practice, because when they get older, a lot of them start being a little bit upset about having to go to wrestling practice or losing weight. Um, Christopher Stern, Christopher, thanks for being a subscriber to Fanco Wrestling. Started freshman year in high school, and that's awesome. And one of the things that I think is super cool that I hear is, and I think is good for the sport of wrestling, is like you hear people who joining in ninth grade is late to start wrestling. But I've heard, like, for example, Shannon Hanna at Campbell started wrestling, I think, in the ninth or 10th grade, and he's a national qualifier just this past year. Like, he started late, and he's a D1 wrestler, started then. And man, like, what you learn is actually, or what I've heard, is that when you're a little bit older, even though you don't have all that experience that some of the younger that you do when you start younger, your mind is easier to be, like, melded. You're more receptive to learning techniques because you're a little bit older. You understand that. When you're younger, you may have it drilled in you how to do an arm bar, and it's completely wrong, or it's bad technique, or how to do a penetration shot, and it's just like you've been doing that same bad penetration shot for years until you get to high school, and your high school coach is like, or your club coach is like, "What are you doing, man? You've been doing it wrong the whole time." And it's tougher to break that bad habit. So actually joining or starting wrestling later can be a benefit. And Darian said Cayden actually just dropped a video, which is awesome. Cayden is on top of it tonight, man. Landville said, shout out to the Headhunters Wrestling Club in Columbia, Maryland. We are on the rise. Awesome, Landville. It's awesome to hear the Headhunters Wrestling Club. Shout out to the Headhunters Wrestling Club. Jason also lost 15 pounds once, but it took him 4 days. Yeah, it definitely can be tough to lose that weight in that time. I told you I did it in a day. It was terrible. It was running constantly. I did it. I never did it again because it was a bad mistake. I ended up cramping up in the match. I still won the match, still rode the guy out, but it was bad. Spanky said 50K. Let's go, Fanco. Hoping to get 50K by December. And like I said, I have a lot of exciting things coming on. Heater Sano Thomas said, Fanco's my second favorite channel. I'd love to know what your first favorite channel is. Because I still love I'm your second favorite channel, but what's your first favorite channel? And any tall wrestlers to watch or study, tips for tall and lanky wrestlers. So I don't usually give like wrestling tips, but like a tall, lanky wrestler that sticks out to me is Evan Wick, man. I mean, just his arms are like longer than my body. He's somebody definitely to watch. And yeah, Jason Brantley actually said Evan Wick's somebody to watch. Bo Nickel, 6'1", I think. Yeah, he's taller. He's not typically who I think of for 6'1", but for sure. And so it's been an awesome night. And I love having you on to this chat. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, and I hope to make this live stream even bigger as we continue on a weekly basis. The Roman Bravo Young live stream will be next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, right here on Fanco Wrestling. And from That weekend after that, we're going to start going live Wednesday at 6 p.m. And I hope to see everybody there again. I hope to see Dragonov. Hope to see Jason. Hope to see Jordan. Hope to see everybody there back again. It's been a phenomenal night. Again, if you want to help see Fanco Wrestling grow right now as we're heading out, join the Fanco Fanatics. All you have to do is hit the join button below. Join at any level. It helps support the channel. And as for Fanco Wrestling, my name's Josiah, and I'll talk to you next week.